Welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the roadmap Wargaming just dropped. There are so many new features they're planning on adding. This is a great look at the upcoming year for World of Warships.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, but I wanted him to do his intro so you knew what we were looking at. You see this is Potato Quality Reacts. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reacts to his reacts here right now. So stay tuned. There's some pretty interesting points that I would love to share with you guys. And to be honest with you, I mean, I was watching this and I was kind of thinking about all these things from a slightly different perspective. I'm sure that most of you, well, maybe the people that are on the stream normally would have a better idea, and I am not a super tester any longer. However, I wore the badge for years, veteran. So anyway, enough on that. I was also cadre for pretty much every tournament that you've heard of in World of Warships. That doesn't mean that I am a better player than anyone else. This is not really necessarily about me. This is about Wargaming's direction. And but here's the thing. To take this back to what my original point was, when I mentioned that I was a super tester, I need to tell you why I left. Mostly it was real life things. There was 99% that. New members of the family that I wanted to try to spend more time with. Just realized that just testing alone was occupying way more of my attention and time, and I was losing my love for the game. And I think that's probably the other smaller percentage, is I really wanted to get back to playing this game and loving it the way I do. I'm sure you've all experienced that. That's a pretty common thing. So anyway, back to the point of this. The point of this is that I wanted to go through some of these things because I think they're pretty darn important. So I'm going to jump ahead to his discussion about matchmaking. I'm going to let him talk for a little while because, he does it way better than I do.
Excited. And so let's start things off with the matchmaker. They did release a video talking about this. I'll cut together some of this video to focus on the things that I am most interested in, I think are the most important, but I'll leave a link in the description below if you are interested in watching this one for yourself. But matchmaker, let's see what they have to say.
The first key pillar we have for this year is working on the matchmaker. The first one is queue times. You may have experienced this yourself if you especially play in off-peak hours, that it might take a long time to find a match, or for example,
I've played a lot of off-peak hours, so this is especially interesting to me. And I thought when Chris was talking about this before, it was definitely something I wanted to hear more about. So again, let him talk.
Ending up in an incomplete match. The first experiment that we have in this area is to have a cross-realm matchmaker.
So this could be good. This could be very, very, very bad, though. Some of the metas on different servers are very different. I very intentionally never play on the Southeast Asia server, the C server. No offense, guys, but your passive campy HE spam, hyper carrier focus is not very fun, okay? They will be testing this, of course, and this is not guaranteed to come into the game. I would suggest...
Before he suggests something, I'm going to point out something that pretty much every one of these realms, if you've ever played on Asia or SEA or EU, you understand that there's a different mindset that applies to that you can see visibly when you move from one server to another. It's a different it's a change in the way. Maybe it's a societal thing. I don't know if that's true, but you'll notice it's a different environment, and it could just be the way the game's developed individually. It's just an assumption, but just because he's picking on SEA does not mean that SEA is unique to being unique.
leave
Or I
the
freaked out.
prime time server on its own and then match the 2 off hours servers together. That way the off hours can kind of supplement their matchmaker and leave the prime time server alone, so that if you play on the peak hours, you don't have to worry about this potential issue of these unfortunate metas, shall we say, of the Southeast Asia server impacting NA and EU. I hope it's something like that. There are some massive benefits here to cross-realm matchmaker, though, that we will get into.
A second aspect that we hear a lot from you about is the tier spread and the feeling of being up-tiered. This is especially true if you play on higher tiers, because over the last few years, we had a lot of you getting to tier 10 and playing a lot of matches on that tier.
Again, I'm going to stop it again and just mention some things, because I think it's important to understand that being up-tiered in many ships, not even most, but in many ships, is almost inconsequential. The only thing it means to you in many of these ships is just that you're going to get way more XP from engaging with tier 10. For me, I find it extremely challenging. I don't mind being up tiered for the most part. If I'm up tiered in every match, like specifically playing in tier 8 is the 8 and 9 are the worst spots for me personally. And from what I understand, most players have that same vibe, that it's just, wow, this is going to be bad. And 90% of the time, it's not so bad. It's just a regular conventional match. I think the inspiration or the tonality we pick up from other players, that being up tiered is horrifying, is a bit overplayed. And I personally don't mind it. I think the players mean more than the tier, to be honest with you. And that may be a hot take, but that's mine. So anyway, let's get back to it.
Putting a lot of pressure on tier 8 and tier 9 in particular. Our solution in this area that we want to trial first is to actually create more single tier matches for tier 10, reducing the pressure for tier 8 and tier 9, and having more fun on that tier.
Which sounds pretty incredible, honestly. More single tier matchmaker, full games like this. I know they talk about queue times and wait times, but maybe I'm in the minority here. Probably am, in fact. Most people probably just want to click battle and get into a battle. I would prefer to wait longer for more productive matches, for more interesting games, more balanced games, less full.
100% agreed. I would even go so far as to say that your team, like I said before, is going to be way more important than your matchmaking tier. And queue times, I don't mind if I'm in a battle with 5 other players. I don't mind being on the short list of players that actually fit the criteria. You'll find that more in lower tiers, like 5, 6, 7. You'll find those short matches where you'll get less than 9 players on a team, but they'll be actual players instead of bots. To me, for the most part, that's way more fun than just being in it with a lot of bots. Bots are very, very predictable, even with the advanced coding that they've applied, that logic that they put into the I hesitate to call it AI, because it is not AI. It's just a programmatic solution to navigating around or into trouble. That's pretty much all it is. Anyway, back to it. Sorry.
Full up tiers, full down tiers, that kind of thing. Playing against your own tier matches, full matches like this, full tier 10, whatever tier it may be, are absolutely amazing. They're very, very fun. You're not steamrolling a ship that you know is way less powerful than you, or you're not forced to fight against a ship that is way more powerful than you, and you got to really, really try hard to even just stay alive. This is a really, really good idea. I'm worried that this will cause even longer wait times, and I know for me that's less of a deal, but I do get the feeling that they're very concerned about how long players are sitting in queue. So I'm not sure how this will go. Likely, this is going to be very reliant on them combining every single server into one matchmaker pool, which is a positive of that cross-realm matchmaker, but again, I'm still worried about that meta difference.
A second solution that we're working on is actually improving the tier spread within a match like this, so you're not facing an overwhelming opposition of higher tier ships. A third direction that we have, which is going to be a more complex topic, is the feedback we get from you about battles that are called in the community steamrolls or blowout matches.
Now, before Chris gets into the explanation of what these are about, I think that pretty much every player knows what this is about. And without sugarcoating it, most of it, 90% of those blowouts are related directly to player skill level and player engagement. What I mean by that, obviously skill level is obvious, but player engagement means if you've played in isolation by yourself for 2 years and haven't played on a team with other players outside of just random matches, you're not going to understand, you may not understand what's necessary to keep your teammates alive as well as yourself alive. This is like a key undercurrent for pretty much everything that's going on with blowouts. If you look at the team that you're with, you can almost predict, I'd say 90% of the time, how the match is going to turn out. And again, you matchmaking monitor fiends, don't draw an immediate conclusion just by seeing one number. You will almost always be wrong. You can believe what you want, but matchmaking monitor, it has a lot of disadvantages, and most of the disadvantages are right in your mind, not on the battlefield. So keeping that in mind, let's go on and hear the rest of it.
It's a very complex matter. We're going to be investigating where this might be coming from and what kind of solutions we might find for this in the future. But keep in mind, not a topic that we'll probably be able to address this year.
So blowouts, big problem, obviously. How to curb that? I have no idea. Okay, I'll complain about blowouts all the time. I'm sure you guys have realized that in my videos, but to actually solve that problem is very, very, very... How do you deal with a just weaker player coming up against a stronger player in destroyers and they lose that engagement, the flank loses all spotting, and the cruisers and battleships are just have to kite away, basically. They just are being outspotted, outdamaged at that point.
And again, not to interrupt PQ, but here's the thing. I'm reacting to PQ, so I have to. And plus, if I'm going to post this on YouTube, I can't use his content because, well, I don't want to get canceled. So I have to be the obtrusive voice that says that, yes, all of these things happen. And you'll know this because you'll see it play out time after time after time. Blowout match or not, you'll see the moment when other players around you decide that this is too much of an encounter to take. And especially if you're in a destroyer, that's a death sentence. Well, even if you're an exceptionally good destroyer player, you're going to be left hanging. And the only way this team dynamic works is if you have team to back you up. And I have seen time and time again where a flank with 5 green ships heads towards the objective, and the second they see one destroyer, 4 of them will turn back, leaving whoever else is left as gunfire, covering their escapes. And I've seen this. And that may not be the intentional outcome, but that is the outcome. So anyway, back to the actual knowledgeable dude.
Turns into a blowout very, very quickly. How to deal with that, I actually do not know. Hopefully, some of these changes to matchmaker tier spread will help. The other thing I would suggest, Wargaming, is to match the same tier ships across from each other. I think that results in a lot of blowouts too, or
Okay, I'm going to interrupt him again because most matches, Matchmaker will assign, if you look at the layout, when you load, you'll see the layout screen of ships on your left and ships on your right, your red teams and your green team. Most of the time, the ship that is directly adjacent to you, directly across from you, is going to be the ship that will be on that side. The exceptions are if they're divisioned, then they're going to spawn together. I don't know if there are other exceptions to that. I don't know if I ever really completely understood all of the matchmaking criteria. So, and even if I did, I couldn't expose any of it without going against NDA. But I'm relatively positive that that he's kind of right and kind of wrong in that specific aspect. Not to take away from what he's saying, it's important to recognize.
steamrolly feeling matches where you match, especially super ships against tier 9s. That's one of the biggest differences in power level. But you spawn in your tier 9 battleship, and suddenly there's a Satsuma or a main on the enemy team. Or cruisers, same way. You're going to go up against Condi Burst Fire in your Neptune. Good luck, right? That kind of idea is very, very difficult to deal with and maybe leads to some blowouts. The other thing to consider is spotting mechanics and how early ships get spotted these days, alongside how powerful ships are at range these days. The shell velocity, the consistency of damage output at range has only increased over time.
Yes, exactly right. And a lot of this has to come down to moving fire spanners' range. Fire spammers can now reach out way further than they used to. You can be farmed by Bremens or Hawaii's from much further out. Of course, if you're talking about a 15-kilometer range, that was exceptionally difficult. Now, if you're talking bordering on a 20-kilometer range, all your support out to 20 kilometers, as opposed to being 15, where they can be effective, especially in older ships. That's a huge problem. And I don't believe that the game has adapted to that huge problem. And thus, we're seeing the effects of that huge problem. That's my opinion.
So it feels like you get punished a lot sooner, a lot quicker, before you even get into a good position. A lot of maps are designed in such a way where there are powerful islands for these cruisers to get to, for example. Oftentimes, you're spotted before you can even get there. It's very, very challenging these days. So I would suggest spotting. We'll talk about carriers in a second, but that would be a big one for me, is the carrier plane spotting.
And always keep in mind, any change to the matchmaker can result in a worse experience for you in every single random battle match that you might encounter. So we're going to be very careful with running these in small tests, experiments, and some things might make it, some things might not make it. Overall, we want to make the game better and have this as a long-term initiative in the game for you.
Obviously, Matchmaker is a very, very, very difficult thing for them to change. So I'm excited for them to try these things. Okay. Little worried about a few things, of course, but this is very key to this entire game. One little thing breaks on Matchmaker and every single player feels it.
I think there's something underlying that he's really not saying, but I know it exists, and I'm relatively positive he's aware of it. But I guess I have to kind of temper this with some reduction in my emotional reaction to this. But viscerally, I know, as a developer in my past life, that there's a lot of code. If you're handed a bunch of code that's already operational to even an entire team of developers that are even very well versed in that particular code, they're not going to know everything that code is doing, simply put. And AI can help some of that become more apparent to that developer, but Even AI can't undo some of the stuff that's going on under the surface. And just the matchmaking algorithm alone, we're not talking about aiming mechanics, firing mechanics, shell mechanics, armor mechanics. These are all separate, independent systems built with a whole tree of algorithms that they draw upon. And they interact and they mesh into one interface that you get to see and interact with. Point being that there's a lot of underlying code in the matchmaker. Most of it's just to balance ships, to make sure that that there's generally an even playing field. And I'm going to get a lot of pushback on that, but the way the code is designed is that way. Now, is designed that way, or was designed that way a decade ago, more than a decade ago. The problem is that developers that used to modify that code and update it just aren't there. They aren't resources to draw upon anymore. So the new developers are the ones that were working on prior iterations, but didn't really have that baseline from 15 years ago of the guys sweaty coding trying to get this game to launch, who had a lot of problems to deal with and decided on the best possible solution that they could come up with at the time. 10 years later, 15 years later, whatever it is, it's a whole different set of issues. You can't add 500 ships, 600, 700 ships to a game, different variables, changing the parameters, enhancing them, decreasing them, doing all of these modifications, and not expect Matchmaker to require adjustment. It's an illogical solution, or it's an illogical conclusion. But the solution is obvious, that it needs to change. The code that was originally developed may not be so easy to do. So anyway, I rambled enough. Let's get back to it.
Very, very high risk thing to be testing out. I'm excited to see what comes of it. Okay, especially a lot of these imbalanced games, full up tiers against tier 10s from your tier 8 and 9 battles. Very, very challenging to deal with those. So I'm excited to see what they come up with. I'm glad that they're going to take their time testing it, though. Taking their time, really refining it properly is really good. I don't want them to just burst through these changes and force it into the game like they did with the, well, aircraft carrier rework.
And again, going back to development, anyone who's ever experienced anything in the development world knows that if you tweak one specific feature, you can crash a whole bunch of stuff all around you. So always be testing, and then deploy. Test until you're sick of seeing testing screens, and then move to deployment. Then you move it to live. Then you make it work. And then you be prepared for a huge pushback on every change that you've made. So that's just maybe it's a biased developer's outlook on things, but yeah, exactly. And again, going back to the spaghetti code concept, if you want to put it that way, in spaghetti code frame, if you don't understand exactly what the code is doing, unless you test it first, you have no idea what the outcome's going to be. There's no quick, immediate solution to any single one of these problems without reinventing the wheel. So unless you want to scrap the game and start from scratch, this is always going to be the best approach.
Years ago, and adding subs to the game, ignoring the problems and just full steam ahead. Consequences be damned.
It's no secret that during 2025 we've been addressing the carrier gameplay in our game with a few targeted releases. In 2026, we're going to continue this trend, but instead of focusing on one huge release, bundling all of the changes together, we'll spread them out, releasing them gradually. We have a few key goals to accomplish, and we think we've made some progress towards some of them. You can read more about that in the article. However, we'll continue releasing until all of those goals are met. We understand that even after that, the work will not be done, and we'll be continuing to address aircraft carriers whenever the need arises. But right now, let's give you a little bit of insight on the features that you can expect in 2026. Last year, we showed you aimed fire, a new AA mechanic that will replace defensive fire and give you a buff if the carrier focuses you too much. Aside from that, we plan to add more gameplay variety for carrier captains by introducing tactical consumables that will allow you to support your teammates better. This is aside from the changes already announced to defensive fighters.
Again, I'm going to have to interrupt a little bit because I feel that World of Warships has floated in and out of great solutions to aircraft over the years. And the problem is they keep trying to push the envelope with new ships and new mechanics rather than focusing on introducing new ships with the same mechanics so that there can be some universality. And in this case, introducing new problems never leads to a better solution. And this is the point that we're at now. New problems, old code. So you understand how that can be a serious problem and can throw off the balance in even the best coded game.
Targeted consumables are going to be focused on adding ways for you to support your teammates. One consumable will allow extinguishing allies' fires from a distance, and another one to heal them. We hope to be able to release them this year.
Very, very, very powerful skills there, obviously. And of course, I am happy with them constantly looking at carriers and needing to rebalance them to actually make them fit the battle. But it feels like they're taking very, very small steps when there are such massive problems with this class. So reduce aircraft.
Again, just like I said before, small steps are the best steps, unfortunately. And I know people are going to hate hearing that, but the simple fact is it's absolutely true. Unless you want a completely broken game instead of a moderately broken game, then this is the best practice approach. So anyway, back to
spotting and eliminate unintentional spotting. They've tried a little bit here, and the fighter change was very nice.
I need to say this. Unintentional spotting, that's how a lot of spotting is and should be. Unintentional. You go out with an aircraft carrier, and I'm not a CV main and I'm not a CV advocate, nor am I a sub advocate. But here's the thing. In order to properly use your aircraft, unless you get just recon flights that you can send out, unintentional spotting is really an important mechanic for a CV player. This may be one of the more important ones. And I think removing that will only force a lot of players out of the game. Again, not a CV advocate. I would love to see them completely revamped. Unintentional spotting, I think, is probably the least of the concerns. But obviously it's become forefront. So let's move on.
I will say, fighters not spotting is very, very good, but why can't we just do minimap only plane spotting? Which of course leads me to World of Warships Legends. And years ago already, they
great solution, right? Great solution.
Introduced minimap only plane spotting.
Approach. Let's zoom into the newly adjusted spotting mechanic, which reshapes how you'll scout the battlefield. Spotting has been updated specifically for aircraft. When controlling your squadron, you can spot enemy ships for yourself like before, but your allies will now only see markers on the minimap.
This is incredible. I've played with it. It is wonderful. It fixes basically all the spotting problems with carriers. That early spotting, the inability for cruisers, battleships, DDs to get into good positions with that massive, overwhelming amount of long-range accurate fire that we have these days. Suddenly you just can't use those very powerful tools that we've been given these days because the ship isn't spotted to actually be locked onto. You know the ship is going to a certain position. You know there's going to be a cruiser in a certain area. Maybe that tells you there's a radar going to be there. That heads up is already extremely powerful for your decision making.
Here's the thing. If you're in a destroyer, your decision-making process every time you get spotted is to hide or run, period. Otherwise, unless you know the layout of every other ship on the board, your only choice is to retreat. So, thus, one good CV player can turn the outcome of a game from the get-go.
Doesn't need to be more than this. The ability to deal tons of damage before you even get into position. It's very, very punishing. Carrier games are awful because of this. And changing it to minimap only fixes 90% of those problems. It fixes a lot of the crossfire problems.
Again, I don't know if I'd go with 90%. I'd probably think more like 70%. I mean, I can still overcome, in a destroyer, I can still overcome some of the impact on that game from the get-go. But that's only because I've been forced to, for so many years, to figure out solutions on how to overcome it. It can be overcome, but it is by no means easy. And the CV has way more of control of it than any destroyer player would.
Where you have to deal with either taking 10 to 20,000 damage from the carrier because you gave them a optimal drop angle and decide to angle to those surface ships, or you chance the surface ship shot by trying to angle to the carrier.
It's also a huge problem for the enemy team because in those encounters, they make the conscious decision to turn nose into torps. And then this is with players that are aware of their surroundings, so this is not a universal concept, but I am aware that there are probably a smaller subset of players that understand the dynamics there. But that being said, the targets you want to get out quickly are those players that are the good players that are aware of their surroundings. So, it's kind of a, heads or tails sort of concept, I guess. But my point is that any properly played ship can alter the course of another relatively well-played ship. So, this spotting mechanic, while it's a huge thing, was kind of always in play. And I think it's part of the best dynamic or the best mechanic that's involved. And this has nothing to do with the game mechanics. This has to do with player movement. So this isn't really a matchmaker thing or a CV problem or what have you. This is specific to players that are aware of the surroundings versus players that aren't aware of their surroundings. So anyway, I've said my piece on that.
Your drop, and you still take that. Like, it's such a massive issue having these portable crossfires, this incredible spotting anywhere on the map at any time. Having it limited to minimap only fixes so much. And I've heard it, I mentioned this in a different video, but it's good we talk about it here. I've heard the reason they don't want to do it on PC is purely because of mods. And they're worried that people are going to develop a mod that allows this minimap only play.
This is also a quite important consideration because mods, whether we like it or not, are here to stay. And again, this comes down to a small subset of players. However, mods are here to stay. They're going to stay. They've just done some enhancements to the mod, how you get mods. So that's really good. And I believe it's a much more secure approach. But mods are very, very important. And they can be used, arguably, to exploit game mechanics that exist that players may or may not be aware of. I call mods training wheels I hate to say that, but and I use them in a limited. Uh, I've used a very, very small subset of all mods that are available, maybe 2% of mods, because there are certain mods that are way more powerful than they're given credit for, and can influence your survival. Although I have played vanilla for so many years, I'm so used to it. There are a couple of mods that, and I'm not going to go into the details here. If you want to hear more about it, I can discuss it more, but there are only a couple mods that I use, and they can give me an unfair advantage. That's, again, my opinion. So anyway, let's get back to PQ.
Plane spotting to be reverted to normal spotting again for people who use that mod. Sounds like a cheating mod. They could just ban that mod. This sort of spotting has been in the game for a long time in PC with cyclones, and a mod like that has not existed. So to me, that seems like a very silly reason to not do it. Again, this is just, it's a rumor I heard from pretty credible couple people, but you know, it's not directly from Wargaming. But if that's the reason that we can't have minimap only spotting on PC, but they're willing to do it on console and mobile, remember Legends actually you can run on your phone, like a mobile game has a better mechanic, that feels pretty bad. And because of that, a lot of these changes that they're trying feel like,
well, I guess I hesitate to respond, but I've got to, because Legends is way better UI wise than the PC version is. I mean, literally night and day, guys. I don't know why there was a disconnect between Legends and desktop, but it exists for PC and Mac and Linux. So can we try to make Legends more of the UI and less of this quirky old 15-year-old looking port? Can we change that? Can we do that? It would be way less clunky looking, way less 2011.
fall short, right? They're kind of stopgaps. They're not actually dealing with the problem. They're just kind of dancing around it, not actually offering a solution. Now, talking about improved AA defenses, dealing with carriers focusing you, big problem. When they tested this earlier, they talked about that already. It didn't do enough. Like the carrier could just still easily drop through it. That is down to balancing of that tool, but I mean, it's even worse than what current defensive AA is, which is even worse than what old defensive AA is. Bring back old defensive AA, Wargaming. Actually make the carrier get punished for flying into a D-fire, because that defensive AA completely spreads out the drop to its maximum dispersion. That's what it used to do back in the day with RTS carriers. There's actually tools to deal with the carrier. That's the big problem here.
I have to add one more thing in this particular spot, is that adding more mechanics only convolutes the problem. I wish I could say that, and I probably said that a dozen times in ST, and I can't tell you specifically what I'm talking about, but I can tell you that adding more functions does not equal a solution. You're just convoluting the actual mechanic itself by introducing more probable fail points. I don't know how much clearer I can be with that, but that's my general idea. Anyway, back to him.
It's not just the spotting, because the spotting alone is already crazy. The damage it deals and the lack of counterplay. How do I, as a surface ship, actually impact the carrier's battle? I cannot. I just simply cannot. And that is the very frustrating part. The damage is incoming to my ship, the positional disadvantage, all that stuff. He outmaneuvers me by like 10x, speed, turning radius, all that stuff. Can always line up a perfect drop angle, and I have no means of going on the offensive back. That's not a problem. That's not something you can really do against carriers. You can't shoot back at them because they're so far away. That is something actually Legends did as well. By the way, if you notice back here, they introduced a fuel gauge. You can't just fly everywhere on the map all the time without any consequence. Very, very interesting. And the last thing they mentioned too is the addition of even more support abilities to be able to damage control at fire for a teammate, start a heal on a teammate. That sounds really, really cool. Sounds a lot like tactical smokes, that kind of thing they added to like Essex line and some of the premium carriers. But those sort of tools did not come with a reduction in the damage output of those carriers. So are we just adding battle impact to carriers through the use of some incredibly powerful consumables and team play abilities?
Again, exactly my point, just reinforcing it. Adding new mechanics doesn't solve for X. And right now, playing into or building on an already dysfunctional system is not the solution. He knows that, and he's trying to calm himself down, and I get it. I get why he would need to do that for public consumption. Me, I really don't care anymore whether they like me or not. I just really want to just enjoy the game. So that's where I'm coming from now.
Without also reducing their damage output. Sounds like they're just gonna buff carriers again. That's what all of these things have screamed to me, is that stopgap solutions that make it actually harder for the carrier to get punished, defensive AA getting worse over time, and adding more tools so the carrier is just even more powerful. It's ridiculous. I'll stop ranting about it for now. We got more to cover, but safe to say that I don't believe Wargaming are actually going to get carriers into a balanced state for combat against surface ships. So they're adding operations. They're going to add back In the Name of Tomorrow operations, lower tiered operations, tiers 2 to 5, which is pretty cool. We never see anybody play that in random battles anyway. So maybe we can add some more of that back in, as well as hard mode for operations. Don't have much to say here. Really cool that they're adding these things for you PvE enjoyers. So they're also adding a lot of quality of life improvements. We saw this with mods being added.
I'm going to interject this here because I think it's something that PQ doesn't really hasn't had a lot of exposure to, but in operations are super formulaic. So you're always going to have, you will always have certain groups spawn at certain times. You can judge the intervals. They're actually timed events, so you know when they're going to spawn, what the triggers are for those spawns. If you play operations enough, you already know these things. So hard mode is really important, I think, for PvE players. Really important, especially for those that have been playing the game for years and have loved the operations as much as I have in the past. If you don't improve that or add certain level of diversity to it, the operations are just going to fade off into the background. They're just not going to become important to the development process. And in order to keep players involved, you really need to focus on areas like asymmetrics and operations. You just need to. Because not everyone wants to be as sweaty and aggressive as I like to be. So, anyway, so there's the operations type of guy mind in operation. So, anyway, that's let's get back to him because he speaks way better than I do.
They want to improve the clan tab, more visibility, historical stuff, which is really nice. I think this is good things for them to go for. The UI has been the same for quite some time, and I'm glad there's some improvements there. In-game, they're also adding like an objective point system, allowing you to see more clearly how you're impacting the cap zone. So defended.
Even gives them a chance rather than that 2 to 3 minute window where they have interactions with other ships to figure out how to, maybe not how to aim, but how to hit the right spot. What shell types are more effective, what positioning tactics work best, when to smoke properly. These are all basic tenets of the game that I feel that without PvE mode, no players outside the training room would be able to figure these things out because it's extremely difficult and it's never explicitly outlined. All these mechanics are basically numerical values that so many players just can't get their head around because they're not developers. They're not engineers. They don't get these things. They don't have to enjoy and play the game. And I think that's a really seminal part to making this game work in the long term. It's already been working in the long term for quite a while because it's had these options. And anyway, I'll let him go back to it. But I wanted to respond to Swamp because that was important. Good comment.
Ribbons, capture points, like actually taking the cap will get you a lot of points that way. Great way to visualize how you're doing, more clear how you are actually helping your team win. I think this is really good. Maybe people can use that to get a little better.
I agree with that 100%. 100%. Having these smaller objective goals, smaller discernible impact goals. And this is what wargaming has. Well, not wargaming, but World of Warships developers have been working on for a very long time. These mechanics are really great. I would love to see them actually get into the game and not just be test beds.
Map rebalancing. Okinawa already. I've only played a couple games. Really, really massive improvement. Mountain Range coming soon. Very excited for this. And of course, we had the new map earlier this year. If they can stick to a couple maps per year, maybe one new map and 2 rebalancing of bad maps.
Okay, so I got to say it. All the development time they've spent copying pasta ships into more copy pasta ships and more copy pasta ships just as a revenue stream isn't helping the player base. It's confusing everyone. And the lack of new playgrounds for them to battle on has been a huge drawback for a long time with this game, especially for those players that have been playing for a very long time. They want to see new battlefields. They want to have different encounters. And it's every time you launch, it's a different layout anyway. It plays out differently almost every time. But for those players that have been playing for years, it becomes almost obvious what other players are going to do. And that on a specific map. And that on its own can lead to a really lackluster game environment that doesn't keep players engaged. Anyway, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada.
Incredible. Here's the mods that they added. The score timer one, an amazing one to add. Here, the detectability timer, very, very good. I'd love to see a proper dynamic crosshair, by the way. I'd also love for them to add an option to disable pop-ups. Like, pop-up ads are so annoying.
That's never going to happen, but I appreciate it.
They turned them off everywhere I can in Windows, and it still pops up. It's crazy to me. As well as in-game, too. Well, that dynamic crosshair is really the next one I would love to see added. This is what it looks like, okay? This is a mod that allows me to have the actual aiming points here. Like, look at number 4 here. As we get closer, you see how it changes? It's really nice to have this dynamic style of crosshair. It changes depending on where your aim point actually is. And notice how it snaps around? This is lock-on. Notice how on the minimap here, my aim point is very low in comparison.
Yeah, this is where that vertical dispersion works in. And the auto-aiming bug is related specifically to this. Do you see where that, see where the cursor is pointed? Where it's locking on? Okay, that's, I'm not going to say it's a code defect. I think it was originally designed to have a specific area within that, within the Sigma area. Now, that's how you calculate Sigma, is on a specific area around the ship. That's how you calculate. Or would specifically, no, not around the ship, but around where your shells are, where your cursor's pointed. There's a round circle, and then it's deformed by the number of shells that hit. And if you look at the Sigma dispersion layouts, if any of you are geeky enough to go down that rabbit hole, you'll see that the shell dispersion, the sigma value, is based on an elliptical pattern. Okay, that's not generally the way sigma is calculated. So you know that that area is being deformed. So the visual representation of it will also be deformed. If that makes sense to any of the geekier members, there you go.
Into where the my actual I'm aiming, like, look at how far away I'm aiming, and yet it's kind of forcing my aim point here. This is aim assist, by the way, also. This kind of idea of lock-on tied to aim assist as well. We don't got to talk about that now, but dynamic crosshair is really nice. Here, I'll show you what Wargaming has in here normally. So if we go to crosshair, Smart Horizon, what I was using, here's the standard dynamic, okay? Notice how it doesn't change at all? It doesn't move. No matter what I do, no matter what I change, this 5 stays where it is. The 4 stays where it is. It does not change. Static, right? It's just another option for a static crosshair. But for Wargaming, add a proper dynamic. So here's static. No difference, right? No actual difference there. And what's really great, the reason it's so nice to have a actual dynamic crosshair, Smart Horizon, I believe, is calibrated to 30 knots. So I see the Montana is 7 seconds away from me as far as my shell time goes. So if the Montana was completely broadside, moving horizontally to me here, at 30 knots, which is his top speed, I would just aim for 7.2 and my shells would get there. That's why dynamic crosshairs are absolutely incredible, and that's why it needs to change depending on your distance, because the amount that you need to lead actually does change here. It's a really nice thing to have. I would love for them to add that. The mods they have added into the game are really nice, and for them to be trying to add more would be really good. They're also looking to rebalance unique commanders, so changing their talent.
Oh my God, we need more commanders.
That kind of thing, making it a little more visible, but also they're adding them into some operations and event battles, which is really nice. I don't want them in like really competitive modes. I wouldn't want them there, but to bring them into PvE modes, that kind of thing is really good. The wiki, finally. It's been years since.
Check out your DevStrike forums. Just Google it if you have any questions about it.
They've actually done anything with the wiki, so really nice to see that coming back. I mean, a lot of community members have stepped up to create tools on the internet for this game, but to have that come directly from Wargaming is really good.
I need to chime in here because there are a lot of community members out there, people that have wanted to keep this game alive and who have contributed a significant amount of time and energy to making this game work better for players rather than just for the company. And all I can say to any of you community guys out there, huge kudos. We love you all. You're excellent. Invaluable service.
Really needed to deliver on that. Really sad to see the forums disappeared a long time ago. Seemed like the wiki dropped off around then too, as well as, well, the Discord got nuked recently. I don't know if you saw that with the WoW's Discord. I'm a big fan of the old forums. I don't like that all these gaming companies have moved to Discord, but looks like that's going to be there to stay. But at least the wiki will be coming back.
Last but not least, though, I have something that I'm sure you're going to be very excited to hear about. Something that I've seen over many, many years, asked about in the community. Finally, it will come into the game. We will be adding heals, so the repair party consumable, to mid-tier cruisers.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Been asking for this for a long, long time, being tier 8, full up tier to tier 10. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Partially because of that lack of healing. It's very, very challenging. Still, even if you gave them heals, it's still going to be hard. But I think this is an incredible change. Very, very, very nice. Actually make cruisers feel a little bit better at mid-tier. Very, very hard. They get quite strong at high tier, in my opinion, but there's this like real massive dip in power at mid-tier, I find. And having that repair party will ease you into these higher tier games a lot better. I'm very, very happy about this change. We'll see what it means. What does mid-tier look like to them? Is it tier 6 to 8? Or is it just 7 and 8? I don't know. But even if it's just tier 8, that'll be a massive, massive change. Maybe paired with these matchmaker improvements, maybe more just pure tier 8 matchmaker, not as many up tiers. I don't know. Looks good for mid-tier. I hope going forward that tier 8, tier 7, tier 9 even will be a little bit more playable.
help them with their survivability and standing a better chance in battle. We hope you really like this and see it in the game soon.
It's not just about core gameplay changes, but also about introducing new events, new features, and new activities for you guys to do in the game.
So they're changing event.
And yay. I love it. However, don't charge us more for it.
Passes back to Battle Pass. I think that makes more sense. It's kind of the more universal term in the industry, and it's non-linear. So you'll be able to change the direction you go into. There'll be different rewards branching out by the looks of things. So you can decide which is most appealing to you. I think this is a good idea. Maybe there'll be easier rewards to earn and harder rewards to earn, depending on your play time, how much time you have to actually grind it out. I think this is a cool idea. Maybe not the most impactful, but they're developing the game. They're putting effort into even some of these smaller style events, these monthly update events. They're also bringing back the card game with new options. I mean, you could earn, I think it was a free tier 6, something like that through here. So nice to have these opportunities to play different types of games in this in World of Warships. I'm not as big a fan, but for those of you that are, I'm happy that this kind of thing is coming back for you. More interestingly, though, we're getting a special Spanish commander. That's pretty cool. Maybe we'll get some Spanish lines coming soon.
Again,
Spanish battleship line could be interesting.
More commanders, better.
Fire with massively reduced damage. An actual downside to it. Could be interesting. But also, we're getting decals to the game. So you can customize your ship a little bit more. Maybe this is where you can display your clasps, right? That was kind of something odd about clasps coming into the game. The World of Warships counterpart to the marks system in World of Tanks.
Just be aware that this is not going to be free of charge. Just so you understand that baseline. There is nothing that's going to be introduced as a visual effect that is not going to be monetized.
I believe in tanks, marks are displayed on your gun barrel, something like that. It's not displayed in ships at all. So nice way to, I'm not sure. Okay, they didn't actually say that that's coming, but I'm assuming that's going to be part of it, right? Why else? Where else would that be? We're also getting some updates to the visual side and the game, well, maybe not game engine, but the visuals of the game, which is going to be pretty cool. Dynamic lighting they're talking about, volumetric clouds, that kind of thing will be really cool. We'll see how heavy it is to run, of course. Things like this, probably more difficult to run. World of Warships, notoriously pretty easy to run. And those of you with lower powered computers, I assume this is something that will be a setting where you can turn it on and off so you can still play. They'll be making sure of that. I'm assuming. I don't actually know that. But it'll be cool for those who have more powerful computers to have a nicer looking game. I will say it'd be nice to have MSAA back. Wargaming, these temporal solutions are kind of blurry. But if you have to stick with temporal solutions, which, by the way, is the idea that the anti-aliasing, the edge smoothing, basically, simplifying it a lot, is looking at multiple different frames and kind of averaging out the edges on those different frames. That's massive oversimplification, I know, but it kind of blurs things, honestly. MSA doesn't do that. The other thing
listen, there's a lot of solutions out there, and there were a lot of solutions out there that weren't hitting the mark for what they were trying to aim for graphically. And I think that it was a great step for them to take TAA and modify it, but PQ is not wrong. It's literally the worst solution that you could come up with. This is a solution from 2015, not a solution from 2026. So anyway, that's my take on it as a developer guy.
Could do is add proper DLSS 4.5 support. FSR 4.1, I believe, is the most modern option. Things like that would also be a big improvement too, because I mean, these massive, they're kind of AI companies now, unfortunately, but they still do some gaming stuff from time to time. Put a lot of money into developing those algorithms, so they'd likely do a better job than what Wargaming's got currently with their TAA solution. Those would be my requests. Or just add MSA back as a toggle, please. I don't know why you took it away. Why take away features? Anyways, the improvements do look pretty cool. Varied time of day. They mentioned even potentially night, dusk, dawn, that kind of thing. Really cool. Changes to the weather conditions as well. New storm front ideas, pretty awesome. They also plan on introducing a new map towards the end of the year. Yes, I mean, that is very, very exciting, of course.
Yes,
Improvements
new
to ship
maps.
visuals too.
Yes.
But new map, if we could do like one new map a year plus 1 to 2 map reworks a year, that would be so nice. Changing problem maps, adding new varieties to play on. I've been loving the new map this year. I've been having a lot of fun with it. The different play styles that emerge, the new routes to learn, all of that. It freshens up the game, even with using the same standard ships. And I really, really like that. There's, of course, going to be a bunch of new ships, as always. I mean, that's the primary development, right? New ship lines, new premiums, all that stuff. So,
And I would argue that stabilizing the game itself should be the primary goal of development. But because Wargaming needs to monetize it, and they are the publisher, they're the money bags. Warships development team doesn't get a lot of feedback on that. I don't know if I can say anything more specific than that, but yes, that has been the focus, and that will be the focus going forward because it is a huge money earner for them.
Still a lot of problems with that class, but they're adding new subs, I guess. But we're also going to get some cruiser lines, some DD lines, that kind of thing too. Very excited to see that kind of thing.
2026 will of course feature many of the events that you know and that you like. Anniversary, Black Friday, Dockyards, Trade-ins, King of the Sea, and actually we're working on a very big marathon-style event that will kick off the summer, last for many months, and provide you with really cool rewards.
So Dockyards, the big takeaway here. I really, really, really hope this is some kind of permanently bringing back.
I think that's part of it, but I would love to see more about the marathon event, because if you've been playing this for years, you want new stuff. And Dockyards give you only a little bit of new stuff with a whole bunch of same.
Dockyards, because if they bring back the Dockyard for a bit and then it's gone again, we're still just going to be at the same problem where people just can't get their hands on some of these old Dockyard ships if they just missed that second time it came around. Lucian B is a good example. If you wanted Lucian and you weren't playing over the last couple months of 2025, you missed it again, which sucks. I really wish they would bring back some of these old Dockyards, maybe 2 years, a year, 2 years after the Dockyard was initially released. Bring it back in the campaigns tab. Right? Like imagine just below the campaigns tab, we just had Dockyards or something like that. And it looked very similar to this inside the Dockyard window. Maybe this is Wisconsin Dockyard you can click on. Maybe this is Odin Dockyard. Maybe Devon Provincian. Maybe Puerto Rico, like Lucian, like, and the list goes on. And maybe you have an option to buy into it again. Or if you already bought into it with the first couple phases initially, maybe it comes back here and you can just start again on it with your progress retained. Something like that would be really cool. And if you didn't buy into it at the time, maybe it's more money now because it's permanently available instead of the, 2,000 to, I don't know, what was the more expensive ones? 8,000 doubloons, something like that minimum, something like that. Maybe it's 20,000 doubloons or 15,000 doubloons, but it never goes away. That would be the key. It never goes away. And then you just go through each phase slowly but surely, grinding out all these missions, but there'd be no time limit on it. Please, that would be such a massive thing Wargaming. I hope it's that. They haven't announced details, but I really, really hope it is that. Anyways, trade-ins are also pretty cool. I really like that. New Year's can be good, can be okay. Black Friday, pretty solid usually. Marathon style summer event, like summer solstice type stuff, they usually aren't very good actually. So we'll see what that's like. Anniversary, of course, is very, very good as always. And yeah, some historical events too, which is always nice to see. So hopefully Dockyards come back. Very excited about that. New lines, of course, very interesting. I'm excited to see the improvements to the visuals, of course. That is always nice to see, but gameplay is more important, of course, in my opinion. Decals.
Gameplay and stability would be huge improvements and would, in my opinion, change a lot of players' perspectives on what's going on with the game.
Nice way to customize your ship. Maybe you get clasps there. Battle Pass, more accessible, more interesting for different players who want different rewards. Wiki coming back. Very excited about that. Battle interface stuff, adding mods that have been kind of staples for years into the actual game. Very excited to see that. The map changes, getting a new map more consistently, getting changes to old maps more consistently. This is very, very good development from Wargaming that isn't like directly monetizable, right? But still very, very important to the overall health of the game. I'm very, very happy overall with.
Seriously, improving the game isn't always about making more money from the players. And I think that that's a concept that's been lost in the past few years, increasingly more so. The old days, these changes were presented for better for the players or better for the game. And I'm using huge finger air quotes here. And this has consistently proven to not be true, and more a tactic to monetize the player's love for the game rather than encouraging more love for the game. You follow what I'm saying? We can't all be Apex or Fortnite people. It's just not going to work the same way. Yeah, it's part of the game, and it's been baked into the game since the get-go, and we've all kind of gotten used to that. But giving us less resources and more monetization is not the balance that we're looking for. And that balance is a very, very precious thing to most players. Even the new players, it's going to be extremely important to them.
This. Less so about this tab, but let's just collapse it and pretend it doesn't exist. Matchmaker, of course, too. A little worried about this one and how it'll go. The C server meta is just atrocious, so worried about that. But maybe there will be improvements where having more same tier games will counteract that, I hope. Concerned, though, about how they're going to approach the meta differences and how that's going to actually impact our games. But that is the overview for 2026 and a little bit beyond, probably, too. Wouldn't expect them to get all of this done, maybe finished completely in 2026, especially that rework. But this is what we got for the year. Very excited, very thankful that Wargaming put this out. Always nice to have some communication, direction, that kind of thing on what they're working on and what we can look forward to. So good stuff, Wargaming. Very excited for this year. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this roadmap and the different details here. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.
And thank you very much, Potato Quality. Thank you for giving us a great overview. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you in the next one. But for me, and for now, that's all I've got. Trinity.